Poetry Center, bringing poetry to Paterson since 1980 at Passaic County Community College.
I'm going to introduce Deborah Landau, and she's the author of 5 books of poetry, Skeletons, Soft Targets, winner of the Believer Book Award, The Uses of the Body, The Last Usable Hour, and I don't know how to, Orchid Delirium? Mm-hmm. Okay, Orchid Delirium. Her poems have appeared in the New Yorker, the Paris Review, Poetry, APR, the New York Times, and the Best American Poetry, and she was the 2016 Guggenheim Fellow. She's a professor and director of the creative writing program at New York University and lives in Brooklyn for her family. She's running a very successful and very visible program at NYU, and you have to be proud of you should be very proud of what you've done with this program and how well known it is at this point. And I think that's a wonderful thing. Anyway, let's welcome Deborah Landau.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks everyone who's here and the people who I'm told are on YouTube or will be. Hi to you too. I was asked to read for 25 to 30 minutes, so I'll do that. This is my brand new book. I'm just getting used to reading from it, so forgive me as I work out the order. And I've got a stopwatch here, there. All right. Flesh. It must give pleasure, but it rarely does. But pleasure is so useful when it comes. Pleasure says, this is your sort of place, your year. You live here. Pleasure's the perfect swerve. It wins you back. Pain won't take you nowhere. Chocolate on the tongue, vodka, velvet, voila. A zipper slinking in its silver, its long slide down. Oh, please. Thank you. All right, so the book is comprised of a long sequence of poems called Skeletons, which is the title of the book, and then interstitial poems called Flesh. And I'm going to read kind of, I guess, from beginning to end, one poem after another. I don't have a lot of shtick to go with it, so you can let me know after if you have ideas. All right, Skeleton. So whatever's the opposite of a Buddhist, that's what I am. Kind-hearted, yes, but knee-deep in existential gloom. Except when the fog smokes the bridges like this, like instead of being afraid we might juice ourselves up, like might get kissed again. Dwelling in bones, I go straight through life, a sublime abundance, cherries, dog's breath, the sun, then ouch, and all of us snuffed out. Dear one, what's waiting for us tonight? Nostalgia, the homes of childhood, oblivion, how we hate to go. Skeleton. Sundays I spend feeling sorry for myself. I've got a knack for it. I'm morbid, make the worst of any season, exclamation point. Yet levity's a liquor of sorts, lowers us through life toward the terminus soon extinguished. Darling, the comfort is slight. Tucked in bed, we search each other for some alternative. Oh, let's marvel at the world, the stroke and colors of it, now, while breathing. Skeleton. Superluminal travel isn't possible for humans, you said. It seemed karmic. We were running toward abundance as if our lives depended on it, egads, but never fast enough. To Fermata, the present lacuna was another way, an opposite approach. Embrace this day. You are transitory, the world laughed. Oh yeah, we laughed back. So what? Ovulating while it lasted was a blast, mainlining that eros, nectar, nabbed, as if. Any way out of this bag of bones? Skeleton. Serenity, that's a vicious circular one. I've tried loving kindness, chocolate, running at night, vitality, energy drinks, slacking on a terrace in Paris, deep breath, lilacs, trying to chill out. What a joke. It don't last long. Everything dulls to a fugue state, its singular pulsing tremor, its lack of friction. Yet persists such capacity to feel alive, oceanic in my longing for rain, for the end of me, fluidity, freedom, numinous, the world glowing on without us, its golden hours and shady graves. You might notice that all these poems start with the letter S, and they're actually acrostics that say skeletons down the left side, which I try not to say too early in the reading because I don't want you to be looking for the words, but the truth is when I started writing this book, I was stuck. It was March 2020, pandemic Brooklyn. Everyone in my family was in the same room with me, and I thought I'd never write again, so I gave myself this assignment to write these acrostics, and the book grew from that. So, yeah. Skeleton. Sugar withdrawal symptoms turn out to be what exactly? Keto flu, depression, killer headaches, and cravings, cravings, cravings. Endorphins, how I long for you. Longing, that's a sugar. And love is. Morning sun, too, especially through open windows, and earth is a sugar while it still greens around us. What else sweetens? Not the internet, not tweets, except Alex's, poems in tweets clothing, definitely not one a tweet from the president. Yet iced with the season's first narcissus blooms this day, and somehow it's still a thrill to wake, warm-bodied, alive. Skeleton. Strutting avec Cyndi Lauper, a flourish. Stunt kissing Kevin S. behind school on roller skates, getting all electric in biology class at Dairy Queen, babysitting, Eric M. lying on top of me under layers of Michigan winter. We were excessive. Those scenarios could get orthodontically complex. Trepidatious afterglow, we'd saunter back to school. Who needed oratory? We were mad for the body and it's meant for pleasure, finery, lips a cherry, nails glossed wine, libido and overdrive, meant to keep us here a long time. Flesh. I had to write the flesh poems because there was too much death otherwise. So here's some arrows. I kind of wove this sequence through the book after I was done with all the skeletons. Flesh, to be kissed, waiter. I like watching you, sliding into the banquette with a red wine, a warm glass, still animate. Only flesh is elevating, it clasps. A prick can be key, how it brings along exquisite its red life animal press, dark between bones like the body's answer to the doozy of us, hurled forward, still talking, all spent, and always dizzying near with sour breath times metric. Shh. And here's some deep pandemic poems. I don't think anyone really wants to think about it now, but couldn't help but write about it. Skeleton. Streaming Netflix is the opposite of action. A nap kept low burning on the margins as if not existing, I don't exist. Slipped from the yoke of life, simple, lazy, the hours pass until the act of life, its people and tethers, ether wisp into a feint of memory, a trace. The small art and craft of talk, how did we manage it? Some things stayed the same, like our nostalgia, like insomnia. Faraway places became more like this place. Nights were felt as a stream of departures in the hive. Flesh. Every bliss is built this way, a hollow thing, with many entrances, with blood pumping a live tongue and limber torso, a fine sweat rising in. We dirty ourselves up. We leave our print. The night sky, 'tis a lozenge that cuts through the larded mind. How I am inside, I can scarce encompass it. Eros sleeps with the windows open to uncoffin the room, the wind blowing across the bed, trees scarecrowing the sky. Congratulations, you scored a heat. It's safe to say we lived for this back then in Berkeley, Ann Arbor, Gowanus. Eros travels everywhere in its morphine case. And again, our clothes are on the floor. Did you come? I'm hiding behind this language. What if I just went and said it, direct, face to face, unblushing? Skeleton. Should we get a dog? We talked about it for blocks. Klutzes, what would we do with a puppy? You with your edibles and me kind of losing my mind. Look at us here, stranded. Long weekend, the longest. Evidently, we've been cultivating a deliberate recklessness, trapped in this getaway for what feels like oblivion. Are you for real? It's a marvelous toxin, shut-in narcotic in these parentheses, nodding off together, one breath at a time. Skeleton. She tended to ruminate, spawning sad, kind of plaintive poems, as if the poem wanted a friend to eat dinner with, as if the poem were afraid of being alone all its life. DL, what's wrong with you? Stuck in the dense echo chamber of your head all the time? You seem like a lively person, he said, though your poems are so bleak. Oof, that's like when a man calls out, "Smile now, sunshine," as you walk down the street. Flesh. I thought a lot about your body, my body, what it is to lie in bed together and sleep. To the shores of silent dark and back we went each night, like that wasn't a mystery. Our physicality grew more hulking. More and more I had to squint at the mirror to recognize my face, that cracked window. Flesh. The long and short of it is, a podcast can only take you so far. There goes our summer neighbor, wife of Bathing It, at the barbecue again. Her toned shoulders, her back talk and small army of dogs. Here we still are. Another summer, same bathing suit, same cutoffs and blueberries, the same sordid daydream I keep having, ashamed here to say because someone might see. We won't do a single new thing, it turns out, just keep cycling through the years as if they were endless, as if they'll never cease. Will we ever run out of days? Who dares to count? To say there are maybe 30 more Christmases, if we're lucky, 30 more Julys. Skeleton. Summer dark found us binge-watching the Perseid, perched high-kinked on the lifeguard chair, undertowed by sky. The stars again with their echolalia, their vanishing. August had come round once more with its compulsory lusciousness, its tang of berries on the tongue. We preened in preparation, epilation predictable as rosé, grass stains, mosquito bites, biking at night. Toddlers thumbed their noses at the pandemic, the sidelined octogenarians. We tried to stay preoccupied with seasonal frivolities like how nano or non were our sunscreens, like flip-flops, tick checks, the cycle of tides. Okay, this poem's a little different. I was on the slowdown yesterday. It's longer. Flesh, you and your ecstasy of coffee, me all amped on juice, an ooze of sunshine, a foil of water, a concordance, two waves in sync, making a larger bright. It's unseasonably warm again, nothing will bloom, the trees blown way ahead of schedule, and we never kissed, not even once, despite the come-ons of summer scented with rain, lilacs in the deli tempting to send me over the edge as if we could rinse everything and be clean again. But no, Thursday, 4 p.m. The city can be beautiful when it wants to. Stands around so photogenic by the boat pond. Lucent doorway of the day beams us through. Pine nettles, puddles, tussle on the sidewalk. A pigeon or two. Streaming by, here come the minutes, exposing themselves, and there they go. What is real? June keeps on flaunting its meadow of music, its drink. Let's leave our apartments and go to the park. It's a festival. We want a popsicle, some honeydew, a break. Let's go out into the music, flowing broadly now through giant speakers. The success of friendship, let's drink to it. Hello, emptiness that is coming, it will engulf. And then, a freighted woman, I'll fall back into my hole. Goodbye. My body will never be satisfied, but here in the pre-headache seasonal glitter, first burst of summer, still the thrill of it, the heat. Major Jackson read it better than I did. That's the thing with a new book, like you're just figuring it out. All right. Good thing I have a timer. You need to have a timer. You feel like you went on for a whole hour and it's only 15 minutes. All right. Flesh. I wanted to write the thing itself, pinned, magnetic, ambient swoon in the infinite air, eros writ large, life, the full force of it, pressing us together, good and hard. But what? Flesh. It wouldn't be so bad if it didn't all go on without you. These inhabited days, the no-see-ums of the 5th arrondissement that bit us all summer, the hard fact of time hauling us forward lit. This is the nth year of my life, and so far it's not the last, and so far it's not the sweetest, but it is because life is sweet. Swept out what the tide will be, beached even, as the mornings keep chirping on, and suddenly, the 10-day weather forecast, the 10th day of rain, we won't be in it. We'll miss the ice storm, we'll be gone before the blizzard, we'll lie down in the dark forever, just bones. But Monday says, off with you, okay, and M is packed up, and come on, boys, and in the cloth of fall into the wind toward the first day of September, yielding again, forward swept. Into the not young we go a while before ghosting the old. Mommy in midlife, is she non-perishable? Of course not. Let's play full speed ahead with the bright souvenirs of this day. Wasn't I a hapless one? Fundamentally mental. Watching days go by this life not knowing how to do it. Watching the boys turn 10, then teenaged, then. The new baby girl, a surprise that grew up too. Intricate past, numb present, and the future that narrows all of us into a shovel of dirt. This is my 5th book of poems. I had my way with each of them. I looked up and I was older than my mother ever was. All right, so the book ends with a series of poems called Ecstasies, and I'm going to end with that, and it should bring us right to the end of my time here. Not on planet Earth, but on the stage. Okay. I think it's got four or five parts. Ecstasies. Into the XYZs of nights and days we stayed, as if the conversation would go on forever. You, ample days of you. Your beard accumulating a bit of snow. The gradual showing of bone, a grizzled diminishment. The stacked up winters, each in its place. In this manner, the years. Spooled out on the other side as if in plain view, a field without you. Meanwhile, we took good care. The greens were organic, honey sweetened the pot. The membrane between us stayed transparent, and we took seriously our allegiance to dream. 2. Like most people, I'm sad at the source. What is my task then? Tisk, throb, begin. The very best time for the body is in a lighted doorway after a snowstorm in the bathtub with a dog standing by. The best time for the body is now, aspirational in the same space, the bed, where we treat ourselves. Here, come on, crawl in. It is quiet here in the room of our insomnia. The body in its simple existence, lips, thighs, feet. Birth and love and death, 3 songs. Creaks and cricks the skeleton, but shush, it's still alive with its hat of hair, its cloth of skin, its cloak and scaffolding, rickety ribs and spine. Look, these bones are made for us, and the room is mild, and the catastrophe, though nearer, is still not. 3. Are we done with life? I'm still so into it. I like to drink and read and use my mouth, our bodies constellating in the smothering heat as the trucks slam by. The song of a siren has a sort of infinity in it, so too the poof of dove on the sill, drop cloth of sheets, a drench, the coming dusk, drizzle of sky, it's fading and spanning, days become decades, and then we belong to a generation of hideous inattention, clutching our rectangles of light like, who am I talking to? 4. Even coffins oblige. Who could stand to lie still for such a long time? What if I sneeze down there with everyone else above ground breathing? What if nothingness is a cold scrape and no more? Oh, toast and oranges, what are we waiting for? We're just born. We're on the brink. Let's ravel together while we still have limbs in this room made warm by our own resources. Our appetites don't know from time's up. Hurry. We trample everything we touch, accumulate and decay, inelegant machinery, often unsteady, and only ever casually on our way. Wild and nervy beside the bed I knelt like someone trapped in the air of the world. Hey you, you're a body, slow down. Bring on the filth and joy. Proceed as you will. Inhabit your skin like you're still here. 5, it's the last one. Catch me alive, I am today. Swept through the air in a flesh, thinky feeling. Lugging itself up the subway stairs and now back on Spring Street again in the dazing light, pumping the marrow, a breeze of breath, of blood, and still the minutes accelerate and we wake back weighted with days. Will we waste them all? And then when we get there, will we think I wasted them all? Stony before I was laid in stone, mourning before I was mourned. And what was this velvet for? Spring didn't know. Flags of the grave, well, also a jubilance, not just a bawling, and off again toward whatever, drinking exalted or coughing, but still can swallow. And look, all your parts are warm and mostly work. And look, it's luck, while not yet a word from the underworld. The necklace of days, bracelets of hours, the flesh of blood, present swelling, the yes please of sex, the abject of, is it precarious? Yes, exquisite alive, staging its trance, the hand in hand, the mouth sloshed with coffee, sugared and warm. You're silent reading this now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deborah. That was wonderful. Now we're going to hear from Sean Thomas Dougherty, and he's the author of 20 books, including the forthcoming Death Prefers the Minor Keys from Boa Editions. His book, The Dead Are Everywhere, Telling Us Things. I love that title. Received the 2021 Jacquard Press Poetry Prize, selected by Nicole Brown and Jessica Jacobs. His book, Not All Saints, won the 2020 Bitter Oleander Library of Poetry Prize. His book, The Second O of Sorrow, Boa Editions 2008, received both the Paterson Poetry Prize and the Housatonic Book Award from Western Connecticut State University. Other awards including an Established Artist Fellowship from Northwest Pennsylvania, 2 Pennsylvania Council for the Arts Fellowships in Poetry, and a United States Fulbright Lectureship to the Balkans. Sean's work as an editor includes the anthology Alongside We Travel, Contemporary Poems on Autism, published by New York Quarterly Books. This anthology was the first literary anthology to engage the complicated disability of autism. Sean currently works as a writing memoir mentor with the MFA program in creative writing at Western Connecticut State University, and as a medical technician and a long caregiver for folks with traumatic brain injuries. He was the 7th official poet laureate of Erie County, Pennsylvania. He also, many years ago, started a magazine called Red Brick Review, which was just wonderful. And I think that's how I first met Sean, probably 35 years ago. Anyway, I think you're in for a treat. Let's listen to Sean Thomas Dougherty.
Thank you, Maria. Can everybody hear me okay? Or okay?
What, honey?
Everybody hear me okay? A little closer? How's this?
Is the sound good?
This is new to me, sitting down like this, so.
Okay. You might want to put it a little louder for deaf Maria.
I'm really honored to be here, to hear Deborah, another poet of the body and its reclamations. I mean, those were just beautiful, beautiful poems. I'm going to read, I think, 4 poems from my new book and a couple poems from my book, The Second O of Sorrow, which won the Paterson Prize. This is a book, too, that was written during the pandemic, and so it's really concerned with spaces, domestic spaces, and spirals out. And it's also concerned with food. I became very interested in food and writing about food during the pandemic. This first piece is called My Wife Never Ate Asparagus. My wife never ate asparagus growing up, or really never any vegetable. Her mother, God bless her, worked as a machinist second shift and really has a hard time cooking soup, or her shop steward father believes the only good vegetable is a potato, which, if you're going to choose a vegetable, is perhaps not the worst of choices. Though it certainly didn't do much for my people, what with the famine and all. But my wife had never really even seen asparagus, I think. The thin stalks I presented to her once on a plate soaked in garlic butter, and oh, how she slathered down those green, slimy pieces, and eyeing before she touched her meat. She started her love affair with green beans, broccoli. She said she never ate it cooked, and her favorite Brussels sprouts, which she liked to cut up like little cabbages and eat sautéed in butter and a fistful of salt. She doesn't like spinach because it is so slimy when cooked. And her parents, even today, will eat little more than a salad. They will eat corn on the cob. Her parents, now both retired from working on the machines that paid their labor, the long hours at the shop before returning home to their children, with a kind of simmering temper for decades that has boiled away. There is so much more to say, but this isn't about anything I really know yet. Maybe the start of my wife's illness, some missing vitamins from her decades of poor diet, or maybe this has nothing to do with vegetables, or even a tomato, which we know is a fruit, but one people like to throw at politicians and the police and bad theater troops. And this is something about the things we never have, or try, or go to, whether a vegetable or meat, or who we can be, those songs we never sing, the cities we've never traveled because we have to work 10-hour shifts making tiny plastic little pieces for other machines or objects that we will never even hold. Those long days we spend away from those we love. And when we come home, can barely cook. And so we open a box made and assembled in another factory and stir it up. But what of those long drives on Saturdays past the fields when the corn is high and the farm stands are full of eggplants, butter and sugar corn, baskets of tomatoes, bushels of collard greens, throw in 5 pounds of fresh bacon. Out in the fields, the men and women from somewhere else are bending their backs, and the air is full of Spanish songs, even in some place like Ohio. We drove past that woman walking with her son back to the farmer's barracks, and it would be easy to say this was sorrow, but they too were singing. And I thought of Victor Jara, not of his death, but his voice. His guitar, he said, was not for the rich, what the murderers could never cut. I heard it once on a scratchy LP. This old man at a bodega in Minneapolis, of all places, was playing as he rung up a plate of empanadas. "He's the Spanish Dylan," someone said behind me. And the man said, "Selvas, pampas, y montanas," and smiled. You see, Victor Jara thought of all the people can do and what not do, and gave his life for them. And they cut off Victor Jara's hands for his songs. In Minneapolis, years after I walked in that bodega, in the same neighborhood, a white cop leaned on the neck of a black man named George and murdered him in broad daylight. George Floyd was a kind man, his brother said. But what is kindness in the face of handcuffs and guns and the shiny weapon of regimes? This is not a poem about vegetables, but it is. What we cook, what we pick, what we choose to try to do. They farm asparagus in Siberia and South Africa. When we eat the labor of someone's hands. Each stalk is a 12-hour day. A body worked is who we bow our heads to and offer blessing. Before we cut the knife into the butter, my wife kissed me long and deep after she first ate asparagus. We made love on a mattress on the floor, on the first floor of an apartment owned by Russians. She was not my wife yet. We had no children. This was long before she started to get ill, before her teeth fell out. You need to harvest asparagus every day, or it will grow into a thin, tall fern, a kind of biometric tree that looks like a thin, starving person, like prisoners pressed against the fence of a political camp. You need to cut it first, and then it will grow day after day after day. Eli Wiesel, when asked if there is a way we can go back in our minds to a time before the Holocaust, he said, yes, it is difficult, but we must. And when asked, what do you do when you go back to that time? He said, we eat. When I listen, to Thelonious Monk, I think he transforms fear into revere and rearranges it into something more like reverie. Pigeons rising above the L, mourning doves in a cathedral's rafters, piano riffs tender as old people making love. When I listen to Monk, I hear you when you called me from the hospital weeping. In the room next door, a woman coded, do not forget, after someone dies, there is labor. Someone strips the bed. Someone mops the floor. And that's something that sort of whiffed throughout this book. It's, I work as a med tech in a care facility for people with traumatic brain injuries, and I try to kind of honor the work that's not visible, the work that's unseen. Like when someone dies, like there's labor after that. When someone lives, there's all this care. And I try to put that down. That's the work I do, but also just to honor that labor of care. And in recent years, I've started to think of poetry as a kind of caregiving, because what I do is I often have to take care of people who for a long time are strangers. They don't really know me. And some of them really sort of forget who I am sometimes. And so in a professional way, though, I have to provide what I would provide if they were my mother, And so there's a certain distance which is actually profoundly emotional without being emotional to that. And it's the same with poetry. In some ways, poetry has to imagine the stranger out there who needs our words, who needs our poems, to reach out to them, to figure out what they need to get them through the day, and to give them that in language. These people who we might never even meet or never even see. And so that idea of the poem as caregiver, removed from ourselves, but with the potential to heal, is something I think about more and more, particularly in the 21st century, where sometimes our work flies through these electronic medium, like today, on YouTube, right? To reach people that we might never even meet face to face. This next poem is another poem about food. It's called At the Rib Fest, and it takes place at the Rib Fest in Erie, Pennsylvania. And I start with a quote from my wife, Lisa. I'm always stealing, she's really like witty, and so I'm always stealing her lines and putting them in poems. 2, 3, 4. My wife says, let's find the most wrecked crew, because wrecked people make the best ribs. So we passed the clean cut boys with their collared shirts, and the black crew from Texas with their professional pig roast tees, until we found a crew from Columbus, where the lead guy handing out sugared bacon had no teeth, like my wife, who long ago lost them to disease. And so we said sure, and we ordered a rack from the fat white kid in a straw hat. And my autistic daughter ate a piece of brown sugared bacon the crew lead handed to her. And then, when we went to buy more bacon, the man refused to take our money. He was a small white man in jeans and a t-shirt. He had a southern Ohio accent full of rolling R's, like the kids I knew growing up who moved up from Marietta or West Virginia so their fathers could work in the factories of glass and steel along the lake. He was sober, though the cooks looked bourbon bad. We paid for our full rack, and my daughter took the bacon slabs, and we hustled away, amazed at such good fortune. Maybe it was some kind of Appalachian solidarity. Maybe he could smell the poverty in our blood, and the long night shifts I work so we can buy meat, and the lines on our faces. Maybe because I'm so cute, my wife said. Maybe he recognized our daughter as disabled. Disabled can get you things, this guy Danny with Down syndrome I used to take care of said. Danny had belts from wrestlers, autographs from Michael Jordan. In the smokehouse of the sky, distant storm clouds billowed. Black and white people wiped the grease from their jowls. Sauce-stained napkins blew like omens at our sneakers. A clown handed out animal balloons. A few drops of rain fell, and my daughter started to shriek because she claims she's blind when water gets on her glasses. I put my baseball cap on her head. Her voice sharp and brittle as glass she will smash against the wall during her worst episodes. In the smokehouse of the world, we wander blind in so many directions. Even the smallest kindness, like a few pieces of sugared bacon, is suspect. Why did he give the bacon to us? My daughter kept perseverating. She needed an answer. What could I tell her? Something about hunger, how hard it is these days to tell kindness from guilt or shame. You look, then look away. What will kill us or save us in the end? This I know she's learned already. We take what meat is given. We swallow its tough, fatty sweetness down fast, as if someone will snatch it from our hands. Do you see another book over there? Look inside. Yeah. Thank you. So I'm going to read a couple poems. This is from my book that won the Paterson Prize. And then I didn't get to come down to read because the whole world shut down.
Right.
Which was kind of rude of the world, you know? So I'm going to read a couple poems from this. So what I was saying about poetry as an act of caregiving, this is a small poem which I think tries to attempt to articulate that idea, and it's called Why Bother? Why bother? Because right now there is someone out there with a wound in the exact shape of your words. Why bother? Because right now there is someone out there with a wound in the exact shape of your words. Two more. So during the pandemic, I became obsessed with the backyard, but this started before the pandemic for me. And I think this was a direct influence on kind of the poetics of Maria and Joe Weil and some people I've known for a long time, and that, we look into these small spaces, the spaces of the rooms and the houses that we live, and we find the poem there. And so I became very immersed and like digging in the garden and playing with my kids and just, seeing this as an opportunity to find poems which were close to the lived life. And so this one's called My Youngest Daughter Brings Me Daisies and Bits of Plastic Trash. And it's about my daughter, whose name is Andalusia Akhmatova Dougherty. A long, hazy day, we climb the air as if a ladder. The black branches of the lilac have blossomed overnight. My neighbor is outside watering her crocuses, wearing the cheap accoutrements of Annunciation, a blue Greek rosary dangling like a necklace from her neck. The first hot wind is carrying something close to faith, or at least the promise of faith. My daughter is digging in the dirt. She brings me rubies. She brings me bits of plastic trash. She names them star litter. My neighbor is slightly drunk and walks as if she has wings, like a ballet dancer up on her toes. My daughter walked like this her first few years, the thing that told the therapist she has the palsy. She tiptoed around the house, her arms gangling and flapping with joy. I named her my furious bird. We named her Akhmatova, the dark light we made her out of, waiting at the gates. Like our neighbor, who I'm realizing is extraordinarily intoxicated. She's starting to slur and sing. My daughter now is climbing a staircase of light, the steamy laundry of the air. The trees are full of crows and grackles. I praise her body leaping vespers. She moves irregular as a votive candle's flame. What can be strung together? These moments are made of love. The dusk writes itself across her face. The electrocardiogram of sky above the trees is where I'm headed. But now she runs, her fast and awkward gait across the lawn, her furious lisped and spittled speech. Her hands are sparrows. Her hands are poems. This is my last poem. I used to try to end on a happy note, but then I've decided to do away with that. I think joy at the end is overrated. This is called Grief's Familiar Rooms. This is a tiny poem. Sometimes I am okay, even though when I come home from work, I still sit in your chair for hours without taking my coat off, pulling at its buttons that are not answers. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Deborah Landau.
Now, Deb, you're one of the first poets that kind of read from the pandemic, or it kind of talked about the pandemic and how it has affected you. And now it's in your writing.
Yes.
How does that feel?
How does it feel? It feels like maybe no one wants to hear about it anymore, but I still have a book of poems about it, so I don't know. I mean, we were all in it, right? So had to make poems, and the poems came out of that time. I was stuck in my desk is in the middle of my living room. I don't have a private office, so March 2020 in Brooklyn, I was at my desk. There's my daughter, my sons, my dog, my husband, sirens going by all day long. I thought I'm never going to write anything again, but I wrote a book. I mean, what are you going to do?
I really enjoyed it because it brought back memories of my part in the pandemic, which is another story by itself. Things are personal with you also in this book of readings. How has that personally affected you? And then you also talked about family and how it has affected your family members. So what is that relationship now? Has it risen to the point that you guys really totally communicate now? Where you are with
my
all of
family's used to me. This is my 5th book. There's nothing more personal in this book than any of the others. So, and besides, it's there's the art and the life, and you hope that in making the poems you're distilling something. It's not a transcription of the life, actually.
And then lastly, are you able to share any hope, to those folks who also, we all went through the pandemic, any light, anything that you could share with them if they wanted to write, just not as a poet, but just to write, to vent, or whatever the case might be? Anything could you share?
I think what's great about writing is that we get to do something with everything we live through, right? Like, you don't just have to endure it. We all have to endure, but we can also make something from what we endured, and that is a meaningful way of going through life, I think.
On how you guys might have dealt with the pandemic. So how did it all come about?
I don't know. I think it became getting older. My son who's over here is growing up, and I have two girls who are 10, 11, and 14. Something about the domestic space. I mean, a lot of this, I said this during the reading, is the influence of Maria. I mean, definitely, I can see that through the decades, the way that she writes, the permission to write about your family as productive material to make art out of, in a way which honors them and celebrates and explores the complexities of what it is to be a person, just out of the domestic space, that you don't have to go anyplace, that you can just, go into the backyard or look around you at your in-laws and, the people that you love, and out of that make something of language which will resonate with other people, because so much of what we live in this life, right, is just that. It's just being with the people that we care about the most. And so I think, the older I've gotten, that becomes more important to me, rather than I knew I'm not going to start the revolution. When I was young, I thought, poetry has to be this great, revolutionary thing, like Pablo Neruda. But, Pablo Neruda's best poems are when he's talking about a tomato, or, or writing a love poem. And sometimes a love poem is harder than a political poem. Martina Spada said something that resonated with me years ago. He says, rebellion is the circle of two lovers' hands. I've never forgotten that phrase. So I think that's part of it. It's getting back to when we talk about the people who are closest to us, it transcends all borders and boundaries, because all across the planet, people love each other and care for one another against oppressive regimes, against violence and racism and death. What is the biggest antidote but to hold on to each other, to hold the people that we love, and to hold the next person, and then the next person, and then we're all holding hands. We're all one big circle of rebellion.
Very good. I think you are starting a revolution, bro. I think you are part of that revolution. Quickly, what has the pandemic and being a caregiver during this whole 2 or 3 years, how has that helped shape you, change you as a human being?
Oh, that's huge. I mean, especially just the danger of it. One of the things about the pandemic, which is actually a positive thing, is it called attention to people who have always been so vulnerable and unseen. The old, the elderly, the disabled. Those are the people who died first in the pandemic. But those are the people who always die first, who are underfunded and not taken care of. And so one of the great ironies of the pandemic is it it showed, as these body counts started to show, it showed the failures in our system, and how the people who do that kind of labor, taking care of very vulnerable people, are completely unseen and, aren't appreciated. And that extends out to the people who worked in grocery stores, people who do lower level blue collar jobs every day. But the society doesn't function without us. And the pandemic showed us that, Now I wish after this, as we start to turn the corner, that, the culture would realize this, and change things and change laws and labors to be able to take care of people who are on the edges, In American culture, we like to unsee people, to push them out of the way, whether it's old, the grandmother, the disabled, people in wheelchairs, we're constantly fighting for funding to take care of them. But we shouldn't have to. Like, that should be, a society should be judged on how it takes care of its most vulnerable citizens, So maybe we'll learn something out of this, these terrible years, that, if we don't take care of those people, what does that say about who we are collectively as a culture? Yeah.
And then lastly, in closing, what could you share with those folks who want to write just to be writing, just to vent, to write so they don't do other crazy madness things? Are you able to share anything positive that might help them get through today?
Well, people always want to write. I always just say, just write. Like, especially the great thing about poetry is that all you need is a pen and a piece of paper and your imagination, and read and find other people, and then just go and do that and put that on paper and feel it and feel the emotion of the language and the words, rise out of you, Nobody has to block that, People are like, oh, I can't be a poet or I can't be a writer, but you can, you just have to do it. You just have to want it and will it and to learn.